Asmongold versus trans people? Apparently. I don't know if that's actually true, though.
VTubers, VTuber Niara is facing a harassment campaign. You call it whatever you want. Just stay away from the kids. If mine...
Stay away from the kids. That seems to be most people's general inclination. I think that's probably a good look if you're trying to stay out of stuff. But I also don't think that appealing to the whole, God, we gotta think about the children, that argument has been used so often to just, think about Grand Theft Auto, your murder simulators. Why do you want kids playing a murder simulator? Think about the children. I don't think it's entirely wrong in this specific instance, but I don't like that that's the line of argumentation.
Minors can't consent to HRT, then they can't consent to puberty. And this is the...
Okay. This is actually the point that I was really interested to address. There's a video of this person, Yara, saying the same stuff. Now, when you're just in a stream, you're just chatting, you're going to misspeak. You're going to say things where you misplaced a word, and instead of saying puberty blockers, you say HRT, because they're close in your mind, and therefore you mix up the words sometimes. When you're writing a tweet, when you're writing it out, you've got a little bit less leeway there, unfortunately, for this person. Because I do actually understand where they're coming from for this argument. I will give credit where credit is due. I think I can understand hypothetically in some future sci-fi existence wherein which some all-powerful science is around and human beings or benevolent AI gods can control every aspect of biology. And therefore, all processes are essentially unnatural. All processes of biology are able to be manipulated perfectly, precisely, at any time, to any degree. And therefore, even if you were to go through puberty, you've basically just made a choice not to choose. You have essentially decided that these certain biological processes are going to occur a certain specific way, and it just so happens that that is the way that your genetic code would have done them without any outside interference. And in that scenario, you could very easily, press a button and say, hey, look, you know what? I don't want to go through puberty. The AI turns off that gene, and therefore you don't do it until you decide differently. I understand that argument. And in that world that doesn't exist, that perhaps might be a debate. Now, I will say there becomes a more difficult debate if you actually take this line of argumentation all the way out, because you're going to run into an issue. And that issue is, okay, consent is the only thing that matters. How do we define when the consent is correct? Because let's say, again, in this AI overlord scenario, where in which someone can totally control people's biologies, and the only roadblock to that is the consent of the individual. What if that person decides, you know what, I actually want to retain my pre-adolescent prefrontal cortex. I like, I don't want to grow out of this impulsivity. I don't want to have to consider long-term consequences. I don't want any of the things that come with having a fully developed adult human prefrontal cortex. Okay, can you consent to that? It's, again, the sort of the natural process, unnatural. That's basically done away with now. There's no such thing as a process that is outside of the bounds of just a normal day to day decision. Hey, am I going to have cheese on my toast or am I going to have butter on my toast? What are we going to do? That's the level at which all biological processes are now at. You know, you're going to have blueberry jam, you can have strawberry jam. It's exactly the same. Am I going to be a male today? Am I going to be a female today? It's that bare bones basic. Nobody even thinks about it. It's a non choice. If that's the case, then consent becomes very weird and tricky because what is the level at which you can consent to these things? They're no longer lasting. There's no longer any harm involved. There's no longer any of these other issues that we have to deal with because we live in the real world. And these medications and these treatments and these things do have real world consequences for individuals and potentially societies at large. But again, in this strange scenario where puberty is something we're actually going to relegate to the realm of consent, where does consent begin? Okay. Now, the argument that I would say the right tends to make about these things is all right, well, what about like consent to a tattoo? Do you want your 5-year-old to be able to consent to have a tattoo? I mean, it's a permanent. It's like, okay, well, should they just be allowed to make that decision? Should they be allowed that amount of decision making, period, over anything, even small, inconsequential stuff? It's actually a strange debate. It's a strange thing because if there are no consequences, well, then who cares, right? But it does raise moral questions of, well, is consent actually the thing that we should even be concerned with? Is that the thing that is really driving our decision making? Is that the thing that should be given sacrosanct status? Or is it something else? Because in that scenario where we've all biological processes are now inconsequential, there are no consequences to any of them. You can go through puberty, you can, change your brain chemistry, you can do any of these things and then switch them back at the drop of a hat. There's no consequences. There's nothing is long term anymore. Is consent the avenue by which we should be deciding whether or not someone can do this? Or should it be something else? Should it be like, you know what? Is this good for society? Is this good for an individual? Is it good for these things? I don't know. These are weird questions. Now here's the thing. I say all of this because I want to not dismiss this argument because this person said something stupid that 80-90% of people disagree with. Because, yeah, the can't consent to people, obviously it's a different thing. Obviously, HRT, even as opposed to puberty blockers, is a totally different thing to puberty. A totally natural process. It's like, hey, look, if you're going to put puberty in the realm of things that you should or should not be able to consent to, it's like, okay, well, then you need to be able to consent to breathe. You need to be able to consent to digest. Your cells should be, asking you permission to divide, to undergo mitosis. And obviously, that's ridiculous. It's insane. That's stupid. Make no mistake, that's obviously dumb. But I don't want to totally just go immediately to that knee jerk response. I'd like to consider these things in perhaps the way that they are attempting to formulate their argument. That being said, look, man, come on. Like, just there's a time and a place where in which trans people had sympathy, they had a leg to stand on, and they had real legitimate concerns and issues, and people were very happy to hear them out and go, you know what? Yes, you absolutely deserve our sympathy. I can't imagine going through what you're going through. It's horrible. It sounds horrible. I hope whatever happens, I hope you're given a decision, a world, a process, a treatment, something that makes your life better, because this sounds awful. I've got nothing but sympathy for you, and I wish you the best. That is not this world now. You pushed and you pushed and you pushed. I think partially, or perhaps primarily, because of some ideological fight that you thought you were having, as opposed to, you know what, I kind of just want to live my life the way that I want to live my life. Some activists got in there and decided, hey, you know what, we can make money off of this. We can make this a social issue. I can create some organization that's going to get donations from people. I can write articles about it. I can blah, 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 blah. And because of that, you're now at a point where, guess what? 80-90% of people, the vast majority of the population, is going, yeah, no, we just don't want to hear about this shit anymore at all. And if you're expecting the response you got 2, 3, 4 years ago from this, where we're going, yeah, you know what? Gender is a construct. Asmongold is a good example of this. I'm sorry, but I mean, if you remember his take on Cyberpunk 2077, where they had the type 1, type 2, or type A, type B body types, he was all about it. He was all like, yeah, it totally makes sense in the setting. Totally, completely, it makes sense. I disagree with that, by the way, but he was all for it. And now he's like, I don't want to hear about this shit anymore. No, stay away from the kids. You do your own stuff, mind your business, and stay out of this shit. That's where everybody is now. So, unless you want this stuff to go further and you want that lack of sympathy to turn into antipathy, hate, and really bad stuff, just, yeah, back off. Realize this is not your moment. You need to back off. You need to back off, and you need to, unfortunately, you need to couch your language like, you know, a lot of people on the right have had to, in constantly saying, hey, look, yeah, I don't think trans kids should be, you know, I don't think there should be, you know, transitioning kids at, you know, 7 years old. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's this thing. Just in the same way that you're going, look, I don't support Nazis. I don't support fascism. I don't support this. Yeah. You got to learn to do that now. Okay? It was not fun for us. It's not going to be fun for you. But unfortunately, that's the world that you made us live in. So now you're going to get a little bit of a kickback. Take it with some grace and humility, and we will be happy to entertain your arguments in the future. With all that being said, good luck in all your endeavors. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I shall say farewell for now.